Sometimes Arsenal release, let's be honest, too much merchandise. There can be a thing as too much merchandise. But when you release a list of merchandise that is black and gold, that has links to music and the NTS radio station, which produces and, well, shows and highlights and plays plenty of drum and bass music, it was kind of like it was tailor-made. So no complaints from me on this one this time. This is today's Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show. Joining every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much as always for joining and making this a part of your morning routines indeed. It is greatly appreciated and I hope you've had a really good start to your week. Thank you so much as always for joining me. Yesterday we returned, and if you missed yesterday's show, you missed the return. Did you tune in? Did you catch up? Did you even realise? Is this the first day you've remembered or realised that we're even back? Let us know, of course. But good morning to you all. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. And I look forward to getting your questions, of course, and thoughts in part two. Trevor, good morning to you, to Paul, to Perez, to Scouse Gooner TV. We've got Paul and Claire. We've got Matt G in the chat. We've got Rich. We've got Arasilki. We've got Glenn and Brian and Dave. We've got, who else have we got in the chat this morning? Black Shine and Runs with Cows, Temi, Ken, Tom, Answer, Babatunde, and plenty more, of course, of you guys and girls in the chat box as well. Thank you. If you could be ever so kind to drop a like on the video, it really does help us out. We're not doing our 1K everyday challenge because I always kind of reserve that for the transfer window when I know that we've got a significant amount of people tuning in. It would be pretty tricky, I think, especially an international break. I mean, that's the worst thing I think about, the transfer window ends and an international break begins, and it's just like everyone goes, it's time to just kind of step away from football for a bit. And I did too, over the weekend as well. Certainly worth doing, and recharging your batteries. But yeah, we're going to jump through some of the stories, and then we're going to go to part two with your questions. But you might remember that a little while ago, and the reason why I put the tweet out in the description about having an honest chat is that you might remember a little while ago I talked about how getting quite deep. So I apologize. The last couple of months has been really tough. It's been a really, really, really difficult couple of months. And I said that I would eventually talk about the reasons as to why it had been a really difficult couple of months. And now I can talk about it. So I will do that at the start of part two. So I'll go into a lot of what's happened and why it's been effectively me wearing a mask for a lot of these shows, and I don't have to wear that mask anymore because things are in a better place, you'll be glad to know. But I'll go into all of that in part two as to the reasons behind that. But let's jump into today's stories and start with obviously the big footballing news of yesterday, not just specifically Arsenal, but it does relate to Arsenal. By the way, if you hear any barking in the background, I'm dog sitting, so I don't think you can see Harvey down there, but I don't know if I can show you Harvey. You can see him? Can you see him? This is really difficult when I've got such a limited. Harvey? No, he's sleeping. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to know. He doesn't want you to know. So I can't angle the camera because I've got too short of a cord. I'll try the second half, but you can see Win now in the background that I was out. Yeah, he's been good. He's been very good so far. But if you do hear any barking in the background, it's because of that. But yes, Postecoglou has taken over, of course, as the new head coach of Nottingham Forest, which of course is a strange choice. It's so ironic, isn't it? We were literally talking yesterday in quite harsh terms, if you will, about the idea that Spurs' season was something of a write-off and something of a underachievement, despite the fact that they'd, of course, won the Europa League. And I ain't quite harshly in on Ange Postecoglou and the idea that he absolutely deserved to be sacked. And, I joined a couple of friends of mine who are obviously fans of other clubs to kind of discuss this yesterday, and I cannot think of a worse appointment. I know that we live in a world now where everything you say and tweet is on record, and you can go back and kind of and read back on what people have said months ago, and you might look a bit silly, but I'm happy to go on the record with this. I think this is a terrible appointment. I think this is an absolutely awful appointment. To go from a manager, of course, that had got you up the table, had got you into Europa League football, European football initially, and then, of course, they managed to get there, could have nearly got Champions League football, to sack him and to have such a fallout, of course, as we've heard through reports regarding the ownership and Edu as well, to go to a manager that have lost 22 games last season with a arguably team with more resources, of course, in Spurs, it is quite the shift. And it obviously reflects Arsenal because Arsenal play against Nottingham Forest this weekend and Ange Postecoglou will be in charge. And Arteta will be asked plenty of questions, I'm sure, about this on Friday at his press conference. But if this doesn't work out, it could be really damaging for Forest. But, and you know, I haven't really got any skin in the game. I've always got time for Forest, as I pointed out before, having lived in Nottingham for 3 years. But it's a very dislikable club, easily dislikable club at the moment, based upon some of the actions that have been going on there recently. Moving into the few stories that we've got to discuss today in Arsenal's international scene, and Noni Madueke scored quite the goal for England in their 5-0, I think it was, victory last night. I watched it last night. I'm still struggling to remember the scoreline, but I believe it was 5. It was 5. It was a late penalty from Marcus Rashford. Goals from Mark Guehi and Ezri Konsa and Harry Kane. But the big highlight, I think, of the game, of course, was Noni Madueke's goal, which was a really well-worked piece of play. Some lovely passing moves, lovely flick on, of course, to the run, and then the finish as well. Very Bukayo Saka kind of esque run, dart into the box, left-footed finish. And it's obviously just one game and it's one goal and it's one moment, but he had a very good game and he's just, I think he's been good so far for Arsenal and of course also for England. And there was a lot of talk around this transfer and a lot of frustration about this transfer, and a lot of people I think have sold themselves a little bit early on this. Some of the comments made by some I think have been absolutely disgusting and disparaging and go beyond what anyone really should be commenting about a player that we don't ultimately know what they're going to do for Arsenal yet. And with Bukayo Saka out, it justifies and vindicates exactly why we made this signing. And it's showing to be, you know, a pretty decent one. You know, there's still a lot of football to play, still a lot of games to be had, and to see what Madueke will do for Arsenal on the right. But his next chance to play, of course, for Arsenal will be on the right on Saturday for that early kickoff against Forest. And if he can get his first Arsenal goal, that, of course, would be a huge kind of boost for him. But he wasn't the only one who impressed for England. Declan Rice as well, over the course of this international break, has been very good. According to Squawka, his stats, of course, in the game, 44 out of 46 passes completed, 7 shots, 5 touch in the opponent's box, 3 out of 4 duels have been won, 3 shots on target, 3 possessions won, 3 chances created, 2 assists, 0 fouls conceded. Rice, baby. What a performance from Declan Rice as well. Really strong performance from him, and playing in that kind of position now that he plays for Arsenal, with Anderson playing, you know, more so is the defensive option in the midfield, and Jordan Henderson eventually coming on later in the game. But Rice is being allowed the freedom to roam for England now, more so than being just a number 6. And I think that's obviously why Anderson, in many ways, has been called up and is now being utilised by Thomas Tuchel in order to get Declan Rice playing in this kind of more advanced position as he does so for Arsenal. And the more he practices, the more he gets these chances, of course, for England and Arsenal, it will help him to become better and improve. And I think this is the role that, of course, we expect him to play a lot more of for everyone who's concerned about playing Rice, Arsenal and England. So a very, very good performance from him. But I think that the biggest highlight from a European perspective anyway was Martin Odegaard, who in a 11-1 victory for Norway over Moldova, scored on many metrics a 10 out of 10. Now, I don't give 10s out of 10. But some of the scorelines that were going around certainly did support this idea. 134 touches in the game, 13 passes into the final third, 11 possession, 9 duels, 9 touch in the opposition box, 8 chances created, 3 fouls, 1, 3 tackles, 2 assists, 1 goal. What a performance from Martin Odegaard. What a brilliant pass, by the way, for Erling Haaland for his hat-trick goal, I believe it was. amazing pass through from his own half into the opposition. And it seems that little trim has worked some magic. And hopefully that will translate, of course, for Arsenal when he returns to action for the club on the weekend. However, many of you would have been sleeping when the last iteration of Arsenal's international players was involved last night, and that was Arsenal's brand new signing, Piero Hincapie, because Ecuador pulled off quite the coup, if you will, last night in the South American World Cup qualifiers, and a 1-0 victory over Argentina, who obviously were topping the group at the time when this game took place. And Ecuador really were looking at this game as something of a real challenge to try and overcome. They were sitting fourth in the table at the beginning of the game, but they managed to come away with a 1-0 victory, an amazing result. Enner Valencia, you might remember him, scoring a penalty in the 58th minute of the first half. You read that right. 13 minutes of added time at the end of the first half, and he scored a penalty in that. There was a red card, though, for Moises Caicedo of Chelsea in the second half as well, and Nicolas Otamendi in the first half. It was quite the frenetic game, and Hincapie actually got himself into a little bit of a confrontation with Alexis McAllister, but came out very much on top in the game. He was first for interceptions with 2, first in recoveries with 5, first in defensive actions with 9. He was not dribbled past once. 90% pass accuracy. Very, very impressive performance for Piero Hincapie. So really impressive game for him and our boys in Europe and across the world in their World Cup qualifiers performing exceptionally well and having kind of these particularly defensive and obviously very physical statistics as well coming out and showing themselves is a very, very positive thing for Arsenal. And it just shows you kind of the ability of the depth that's in the squad. Noni Madueke, not a starting figure in Arsenal's best 11, doing really well. Piero Hincapie, not a starting figure in Arsenal's best 11 necessarily. Who knows? Maybe in the future, having a very, very good game here as well. Mikel Merino, of course, not a starting figure necessarily for Arsenal, scoring a hat-trick for Spain in their win over Turkey over the weekend. The depth in this team is very impressive, and it leaves Arteta with a lot of resources and, of course, very little, of course, to go or anywhere to hide unless there is another serious injury crisis when it comes, of course, to Arsenal's ambitions for the end of this season. But your ambitions when it comes to keeping yourself protected, perhaps hopping to the likes of Ecuador and South America and going traveling. Maybe you're off to Montenegro, where my missus is gone for a week with the family, and they need to hop back digitally to the UK if they want to watch some shows. You know, I can't even remember the name of the show. It was on Netflix, and quite frankly, there's probably a good reason for that. But couldn't watch it out there this week, so they're going to use NordVPN, hop themselves back digitally, and of course be able to watch it, no questions asked, because it is the #1 VPN service that I have to recommend that you get involved with. And of course, they're very much kindly supporting the channel this month and next as well. And of course, if you want to get a 1 or 2 year plan and you go for that 2-year deal, you get 4 months extra thrown in free on top of that too, and a 30-day money-back guarantee on top of that even. Who can say any fairer than that? I certainly couldn't. If you want to change your geolocation digitally, if you want to protect yourself while using those public Wi-Fi servers and give you that extra shielding, the level that we may have seen from the likes of Piero Hincapie, shielding that Ecuador backline and goalkeeper as they kept a clean sheet against Argentina. Well, you know, when it comes to comparisons of defensive security, NordVPN, of course, are the ones to go with. Link is in the description as always, nordvpn.com/Gooner. Get yourself a significant discount off a 1 or a 2-year plan and protect yourselves online. Right, let's go to part 2, your questions and more, right after this. Right, this is part 2 of today's show, which of course means we are going to be jumping into the chat box and tackling some of your questions. But first, I did promise that I was going to be speaking about some of the situations that have gone over the last kind of 2 months. And as I've mentioned before, it's not. I'll be very, very, very blunt and honest with you. It's been a really difficult 2 months, but it's been worse actually for some others as well around me. And effectively the scenarios, you may have even seen this, you may even be aware of this. Currently I work for Reach, of course, who are the broader company that have the likes of Football London and the Mirror and the Express and Manchester Evening News and the Liverpool Echo, etc., and so on. And a big restructure happened at the company in July, and that restructure was set to put a lot of people and their livelihoods and their jobs into jeopardy, very sadly. And over the last 2 months, we've been going through this process, of course, which right ahead of the start of the season. You'll know that this isn't the first time I've gone through this. I've been very open and honest about kind of my work situation always with the company. And this is the 4th time that my job's been kind of placed at risk in the years since I've been at the company. I only joined in 2021, and this is the 4th time that I've obviously gone through this type of process. And I'm very happy that I am very fortunately safe, and I will be continuing my work with Football.London, and now more so as well with the Mirror, and doing more work with print as this restructure takes place. And you'll see more, of course, around how things are going to change from my kind of work side of things and that perspective. But if you ever pick up a newspaper, there's potential, of course, that you might read some of my articles now in the Mirror at times as this kind of change takes place around the company. But while that's something to consider to look forward to, I've lost some very, very close friends of mine. I've lost people that I've looked up to. I've lost people that gave me opportunities. I've lost so many good people. I remember when I was told the news that, very fortunate that I would be staying, and I rang my other half to let her know. And the first thing that she said was, is that you don't sound happy about this. And I just said that it's really difficult to be happy. And it's not that I'm not very grateful to still be in a position where I've got the role, but losing some brilliant, brilliant people who I know have now, announced that they're leaving, but particularly Rob Guest, who produced some fantastic content for us over in Singapore when I couldn't obviously go on the tour. Tom Coley, who's been doing some brilliant work with Chelsea and our Chelsea writing team. And of course, broadly, he's been doing some Arsenal stuff as well. 2 amazing, excellent, brilliant writers we've sadly lost. And also, I've said goodbye to my boss, Lee Wilmot, of course, who is the person who is really the reason why I'm covering Arsenal full time at Football London. I've got a big, love for Tom Marshall-Bailey, of course, who initially gave me the chance with Football London back in 2021, but it was Lee that was giving me some brilliant chances here and to make basically what I do happen. And he's the reason I get to do what I do. And I'm looking forward to working, of course, with a brand new leader of our team in the weeks to come and, of course, the foreseeable future. But it's never nice to lose people. And while some people, of course, as well are leaving kind of our group as well to move to other sections of the company as well. And I'm really glad that they're still going to be safe. It's been really, really hard. And obviously to sit and do this show every single morning, knowing that I don't know what's going to happen. Mentally, it's been a really, really difficult month. And, I'm always open to talking about things. I'm very open in giving you kind of a glimpse behind the curtain when I can and give you kind of insight into what's been going on. So, it's been horrific the last 2 months. And I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't say anything about it because obviously it was an ongoing process. Now that has finished, and I know that my position, and I know, of course, others have already announced theirs as well, it's never a nice thing to have to go through. And I'm sure there are a lot of people listening that have gone through periods where they've been put at risk, or worse, of course, have sadly been made redundant. And you know how hard it is. I consider myself to be in an incredibly privileged position to the job that I do. And to be able to, cover the club that you love, write about the club that you love, talk about the club that you love, and cover the club you love home and away is an unbelievable privilege that I don't take for granted any second. But, I'm gutted that we've lost some brilliant, brilliant writers. So all I can say is if there are people watching here who happen to be part of other, whatever companies that are looking for writers, Rob Guest, Tom Coley, are two of the absolute best. You couldn't do better. They are brilliant. So if and when you're looking for writers, please consider those guys because they are top people. So please. If in any way they're going to, I don't know, the world of journalism is not exactly forthcoming with opportunities, but yeah, it's really difficult, and it has been a difficult couple of months, and I wanted to talk about it, but I couldn't, so I'm talking about it now because I can. So I hope that you understand why maybe there have been times and days where I've not exactly had the energy I sometimes have in other days, and also why I'm now definitely taking more breaks. June went to Canada, that was great. And of course, went to Naples this weekend, just gone, taking the missus away for her 30th. And, I think while I won't be going away necessarily every single international break, I'm definitely going to be looking at taking breaks from the show, from work, from life, and just recharging the batteries a lot more because, it's hectic. It's a toll, and it's hard, and it's never easy, and it's really difficult. And I know that there are certainly jobs out there that are much tougher than mine. And so if I'm feeling like I'm feeling doing this, I can't imagine what other people must be feeling doing much tougher jobs than I do. So as always, please look after your mental health, people. Please do everything you can. And, I've finished a round of therapy as well over the last month. That was great. If you can do therapy, go and do it. Maybe you did it in the past, and just because you've done it once, it's like, I think my therapist said to me, it's like if you finish and you come to the end of the round and they don't feel like you need it at this point anymore, it's worth getting a top up. Get a top up of therapy. Go and do it. I know that I'm sure Elliot on the Vision's given you a code for some kind of therapy subscription service at some point. You can probably go check them out. Sponsor me if you want. But yeah, go and get any way you can. If you're in the UK, you can apply, of course, through your GP, through your doctors. You can get it on the NHS if you need to. It takes some time, of course. You might need to be patient, but you can get access to it. Just look after yourself. It's not just physically you need to look after yourself and your health. You need to look after yourself mentally. And it's certainly not a sign of weakness to go and ask for it. It's not a sign of it. And especially, talking as a man, we don't tend to talk about our feelings, us guys, too often. All people, of course, but particularly men, we don't tend to go and talk about our we don't go and talk about our feelings. So I recommend you do. Lasser says, will the show survive? Yes, very much so. The show's going nowhere. And there might even be more video content to come over in the world of Football London as well. I reach. So the show is still going on. We're still doing these shows every single day. We're still going to be cracking on forwards. And they're very much still aware of that. So there you go. Anyway, that's enough about me. I'll make sure I leave a timestamp so Barry from the Midlands doesn't get annoyed at the lengthy intro to part 2. But I've only got around 15 to 20 minutes to take your questions now. So if you've got questions, now is the time to chuck your capital Qs into the chat box, and we'll go through as many of these questions as we can. If your question is, Tom, that's a really nice jacket, how amazing is it? The answer is, it's amazing. I'm in love with this. When I saw the drop of the merchandise, and I cannot wait to see if Laura does indeed, Laura Francis Kirk does a behind the scenes skit as she does. I hope there's one on this set because I'd love to see it. But yeah, it's a great one, and the NTS collaboration is it's right up my street, as you can tell. Let's go to let's go. Yeah, I mean, there's some really good comments here. I mean, Martin says, definitely second that, Tom. I saw a clinical psychologist, a hypnotherapist years ago. It was an excellent experience. So Nicholas says, take care of your mind like you would your car. Tune-ups and maintenance can never be a bad thing. Yes, some really good comments. Gil says, I talk about my feelings all the time with everyone. Exactly. Speak to your friends. If you don't want to speak to like a therapist or whatever, psychologist, speak to your friends about it. Speak to your other half about it. Don't be afraid to, be a little bit more open, because life's hard, man. Life's really difficult. All right, let's go in. Let's get back to football, shall we? Because otherwise, as I say, people are going to lose interest. Scouse Gooner says, what position do you think Piero Hincapie will play? Centre back or left back? I mean, I think potentially, both. We could see him in both roles. He was currently playing left centre half for Ecuador. But there's definitely an opportunity that we might see him play left back for Arsenal in certain games. I think we've got such depth on the left side of our defence now. Calafiori, Gabriel, Lewis Skelly, and Hincapie. Such Timber can arguably play there as well in certain games if we ever needed him to. We've got great depth in our defence, and it's absolutely brilliant to see the depth that we've got there. Matt says, I've just started therapy and it's incredible. Exactly. Thank you, man. And thanks, Raf. Appreciate your kind words, man. Appreciate it. And I saw, just for clarity, there was a couple of people in the chat box saying, just to clarify, I am safe. I've kept the position that I've got. So I'll still be producing content for FL, still be producing content for, of course, the Mirror now as well. So content still continuing over at FL. And of course, I always point you in the direction of the website and in the direction of articles. In fact, I can give myself a selfish plug already, because that Piero Hincapie story that I did yesterday has got quite a lot of relevance. Now, of course, after his performance last night, I'll probably be doing an updated version of it today as well. And Vakan says, hi Tom, as someone who was worried about employment coming out of uni, your show has been helpful for me. I'm glad to see you're doing better now. Thanks, Vakan. That's very kind. And yeah, look, coming out of uni and looking for employment is tough, and I came out of uni and went into teaching. Very different career than what I've got now, and I enjoyed it. But if you're not happy doing the job that you're doing, you've got to try and do as much as you can, I think, extra to, if you're able to. It's never easy, especially if you've got family and, stuff going on. But when I was teaching, I was doing the show, I was writing for free for loads of websites, building up kind of a portfolio of work, while also doing, as I say, one of the most demanding jobs out there is teaching. Huge respect for anybody who does the profession. I'd never recommend it, sadly, to anyone, just because I know how tough that it is. But yeah, just do what you can to put yourself, and you got to put your happiness first. So if you're not doing something you don't enjoy, if seek advice, seek help. I'm not just saying quit your job, go do it, because that's just naive, of course. It's not as easy as that. But speak to a careers advisor, do whatever you can to potentially look for other opportunities. Ty says, what's our form like against teams with the new managers, as I believe it isn't good? We always seem to play against teams with new manager bounces. To my knowledge, new manager bounces are a bit of a myth. I think the stats are that teams have a 33% win rate when they have their manager's first game. So less than half, 1 in 3, only a third of managers end up getting a victory when they take over their new position in their first game. Oslo says, yes, big up to all the service workers. Everyone should work a day in their shoes to see what it's like and what we have to go through every day. Exactly. Yeah, huge respect, Oslo, 100%. And he says, Tom, have you considered going solo like Charles? No, I'm very happy what I'm doing, and I've been offered some brilliant opportunities, and I don't take it for granted at all. In the access that I've got, and that comes from, of course, the opportunities that I've been given. It's just an incredibly unstable profession, journalism. It's teaching is very hard, extremely difficult, mentally such a toll, and you have to dedicate hours of your life. And people talk about the 13 weeks of holiday, sure, but it's not that. It doesn't feel like that. You're working in those holidays, you're planning, you're marking, you're doing extra stuff out of hours. The hours are crazy. But it is a stable position in the sense that, it's not really. There's always a demand, of course, for teachers, and that's because of how hard it is as a profession. But journalism is incredibly unstable, and you kind of have to accept that as part of the knowledge of being in it. Which is, of course, part of the reason why I continue doing what I do here. So, no, I haven't considered it because thankfully I haven't needed to. But Charles is doing an excellent job, doing what he's doing. And if you're not, of course, a Patreon subscriber of Charles's, make sure you go over and become one. Just a couple of super chats. Jason says, I work in mental health, and I would always say go to someone. My door is always open. Also, if anyone needs a chat, it's very kind of you, Jason. Yvonne says, leave Eze alone. I mean, I don't know if anyone's even mentioned Eze, have we? Eze, of course, is still, I think, getting more scrutiny now he's moved to Arsenal. We kind of touched on that yesterday. And Jason has also been a member now for 2 months on the channel, which is great to see. Thank you, Jason, for your kind support. Vegas says, just here to congratulate on the. There's no promotion. It's just a continuation, as I said before, and surviving this recent round of redundancy. Harold says, do Arsenal fans understand Odegaard? Levels of hate and criticism are crazy, and from Arsenal fans as well. I mean, not all of them do, sadly, I think, Harold, and he does face levels of criticism which go beyond what he is worthy of. He doesn't deserve the scrutiny that he gets at all from many. It's just such a shame, I think, a player so talented has seemingly got kind of a little bit of a. For some reason, he's gained a dedicated following of doubters and critics. I don't quite understand it. Mark says, stylistically, how would you compare Nuno Ball to Ange Ball? And how difficult might it be for Forest to adapt given the players it has? Well, Nuno Ball's a lot more pragmatic, Mark. It's a lot more industrious and physical, and I think defensively solid. The system's a lot more structured, whereas Ange Ball's a lot more chaotic. Compared to Nuno's style of football. It's a lot more gung-ho, a lot more attacking, a lot more vulnerable. It could have greater upsides offensively, but equally they could be conceding now a lot of goals. And Forest last season were one of the best defensive sides in the league. Matt Sells, of course, earned that Golden Glove award alongside David Raya. Unsurprisingly, now, what he has got, Ange, is now a team that's got a good defensive base, and maybe that will help him. Spurs didn't have that, so maybe that will change things, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. And Jason also dropping another super chat and says, and Tom, one for you. Name 5 players that were the 14 top, not Victor or Henry, or 5 players that wore the number 10, not Eze. Oh, so players that wore the number 14 that were not Victor or Henry, and 5 players that have worn the number 10, not Eze. Well, 10's probably easier. So Emile Smith-Rowe was the most recent. Before that was Mesut Ozil, and then Jack Wilshere. And before that was William Gallas, I think, was the 10. After that, Dennis Bergkamp. And that's 5. So I've named 5, but going back before Dennis Bergkamp, my knowledge of numbers before that era is going to be much more tricky. 14's quite tough. So Eddie Nketiah was the last one before Victor Gyökeres, of course, to wear the number 14. Before that, it was Theo Walcott, I think, took the 14 shirt. Then before him was Henry. Before Henry, number 14, I'm going to have to give up. Arsenal numbers transfer marks. I'm sure people in the chat box are already telling me plenty more. So number 10, Van Persie, of course, also wore the number 10 shirt during the 10-11 season. I always forget that he had a season of wearing the number 10 shirt. Before Paul Merson, of course, as well. Ian Selly, Kevin Campbell, Alan Smith also wore the number 10. Before, it's difficult when you go into kind of the 90s and before. Aubameyang, yes, of course, Aubameyang. Completely forgot about Aubameyang, number 14. When you go back past the 90s and before, numbers changed around. They weren't kind of as dedicated to specific players as they are now. Numbers did tend to change. So, it's mad. I forgot Aubameyang. Nketiah, Aubameyang, Walcott, Henry, David Hillier, Paul Davis, Martin Keown, Eddie McGoldrick, Colin Pates, Alan Smith, Neil Heaney, Ray Parler, even wore number 14, Anders Limpar, Paul Davis as well. I think I've mentioned some of these with the number 10s as well. That's what I'm saying. Numbers would change quite dramatically in the 90s and before, and they weren't even, didn't have names on the back of shirts. It was just numbers, and numbers would change quite frenetically, I guess, throughout the time. But good question. I'm annoyed about the Aubameyang one, but other than that, not too bad. Kirill says, I learned there are 3 crucial factors with work. 1, the work itself. 2, the managers and co-workers. And 3, the salary. And if you have 3 out of 3, you're doing well. And Kirill's very happy to have 3 out of 3. Well, you're very lucky. I don't know if that's the majority or the minority or maybe even the average. I don't know. But you're very fortunate to be in those positions. But I'd also add, the work itself, of course, yes, managers and co-workers, but I'd add also happiness. I think that's a real crucial factor when it comes to your job and what you do. Eddie says, how do you see our chance in the Champions League this year? Do you think that we have what it takes to get over the line, especially considering how we fell short against PSG and Bayern in the last 2 seasons? I think with the depth that Arsenal now have in the squad, you've definitely got to be looking at that and thinking, yeah, look, that is really tough. Really tough to not be optimistic about what we can achieve with the depth that's in the squad. But at the same time, if we have similar injury crises, it's still going to be very hard because those crunch games come at the end of the season where maybe you're missing big players. I think that we have a great chance at the Champions League this year. You know, we're absolutely in the top 4 teams, in my opinion, in world football. I think in terms of clubs right now, Arsenal are in the top 4 or 5 teams in the world in terms of competitiveness. You have Liverpool, you've got PSG. Arsenal beat Real Madrid 5-1. You'd probably put us above Real Madrid right now, but based on obviously what we've achieved against them last season. So, yeah, very, very tricky. Nuno to Leverkusen says, D, is that a question or is that's actually happening? I think they've already employed somebody, or they're about to employ somebody. Is it a Danish coach they're employing to replace Ten Hag? I think it might be Kasper Hjulmand. Yes, Kasper Hjulmand was appointed as the new boss. The former Denmark coach signed the deal with the German side. So, yes, it was the Dane. And Jason says, here you go. You got all 10. And Gallas was a good one. Yeah, it's one people forget, but apparently so is Aubameyang. Ali says, hi, Tom. I'm 28. I'm working engineering, and I've just become redundant after 7 years. Any advice? Love the show. Ali, first of all, I mean, so incredibly sorry that you've gone through that. And I hope that, of course, the package that you received at the end of that redundancy after 7 years being at the company can give you some kind of buoyancy initially, of course, which is really important. And all I would say to you is to look, of course, after yourself. And if you need to take an initial break, to do that. And if you've got friends and family, of course, around you, that really does help. And if you don't, you know, I'm sure that hopefully you can find some support that is out there if necessary. And I'd just recommend just thinking seriously at 28 as well. It's really tough. You know, if you've got those abilities, those skills in that profession, and you've got your CV, update, of course, your CV as best you can. There's a lot of tools out there today that can give you advice around that as well. And just think really hard about what it is you want to do and what is accessible to you with the skills and the qualifications that you've got. Or if you can do any extra work to broaden those skills and qualifications, of course, to maybe broaden the opportunities that you could get. Speak to friends and family, of course, about opportunities. They say a lot. It's about who you know rather than what you know as well, which is definitely true. It's so often for so many about that. So that's the advice I can give you, Ali. But the first thing, always look after yourself and lean on people. You know, lean on others. Don't just shoulder it all yourself. You need to spread the weight amongst yourself and those close to you and get that advice. And also, Ali says with a question, and to be fair, mate, dropping super chats in, I really appreciate it, but contextually, yeah, you don't need to do that to ask me a question. But Ali says, and an Arsenal question: do you think Madueke will play more minutes on a right wing and left wing this season? I still think it will happen more so on the left because Saka will come back, but his importance to the right cannot be understated. Absolutely cannot be understated. Top Dog says, take it from an old guy, do something you love, not just a job. And of course, it's really difficult. It's easy for us to sit here and say, you know, do a job you love, you know, and do a job that makes you happy. Because sometimes you need to make ends meet and you can't pick and choose what you want to do. And it's really difficult. So I understand that. I think the advice I always give to people is if you want to do a job you love, just put as many measures in place as you can to try and get that rolling, get that happening. You know, the advice from a personal point of view when I was teaching was I was volunteering at websites, I was writing articles for free, for different, building up a portfolio of work, I was doing this channel. In 2025, you've got things like Substacks and blog posts. If you want to get into writing, start a blog. If you're at uni or you're even at school before that and you're watching the show and you want to get into journalism, you know, you've got to have a body of work. You've got to have something you can point to. You've got to have something which, you know, you're showing that progression, you're showing that improvement so that when you get an opportunity maybe comes along, you can show them what you've been doing. You know, you don't just sit on your hands. You know, it's graft and it's a lot of hard work, especially potentially working outside things. And maybe you've got other responsibilities as well that make it tougher. But you know, just do everything you can to build that body of work up, and to build a portfolio and be consistent in what you're doing. Gary says, I can see Nuno being the next West Ham boss. I can see him doing very well there as well. If I was West Ham owner, I'd be going all out. I think that's a really good point, Gary. That's an absolutely excellent suggestion as well, because I don't think, as Ty says, that Graham Potter is... Do you remember, did anyone watch the show a few years ago when I had Arsenal fans who were big Arteta out saying we should appoint Graham Potter? Do you remember those days? Do you remember the Graham Potter days where there was genuinely a lot of Arsenal fans saying we should get rid of Arteta and bring in Graham Potter? Does anyone remember? Were you one of those people? Are you going to be brave and honest and admit that you were one of the people sitting in my chat box saying that Arteta needs to go and we need to bring in Graham Potter? Let me know if that was you. Be honest. We won't crucify you for it, but we might laugh a little bit. So, it's just, you know, yeah, and Temmie's absolutely right. Oliver Glasner is the new Graham Potter. It's just, it's a flavour of the month. Last year it was Inzaghi. He goes and loses the Champions League final and goes off to Saudi. You know, it's just, it's funny, isn't it? It's a flavour of the month. It is. Nifty Legend says, I've always backed Arteta. And what I would say to that, you know, is that that's great. But it doesn't change anything about a position. The only time that I think where it does change things is if you've like never backed him. If you've never backed Arteta from the start, you know, if you never wanted him to succeed, if it just became kind of personal, that's where it kind of bleeds into you're not really an Arsenal fan anymore at that point. But when it comes to times of doubt, and there was times of doubt, I had doubts. You all know my Villarreal episode. You know, that was very obvious where I was kind of at that point. I didn't see a way forwards, and I'm so glad he proved me wrong. But you got to look at, you got to consider, you know, where we were and where we have come from and where we are now. And I guess we're in the phase now where we find out whether or not he's the guy that can take us to that next step, or if he's the guy that's taken us as far as he can. And that's kind of where we are at, I think, with Arteta. And we're in this period of finding out whether that is the it's just laughing at Harvey's splayed out laziest of dogs these days. He's getting on a bit. Shanita says, Tom, so Brazil didn't play Big Gabby yesterday in a match they needed to qualify for the World Cup. Can you confirm to us that he's not injured? I can't confirm to you that, I'm afraid. And I was entirely unaware of that as well. It shows the South American games are so late at night. They lost to Bolivia 1-0. Incredible. Yeah, Gabriel was on the bench. Yes, he was on the bench. So he just didn't play. I guess when you're 1-0 down and you're thinking you're going to rotate some players, you're probably not bringing on Gabriel, I guess. They brought in Marquinhos and Joao Pedro and Rafinha and Jean Lucas and Estevao. Didn't bring on Martinelli. He was an unused substitute as well. Didn't bring on Andres Pereira. Yeah, I guess you're probably not. If you're 1-0 down and, you know, they scored at half-time, you're probably not going to bring Gabriel on to try and win the game. I know maybe set pieces, but I think we've got to be pleased that he's not played. Ike says, what do you feel about Arteta allowing Odegaard to play with more freedom? He did that yesterday and put in a very good shift. I think that's the word, isn't it? That's the word. Freedom. Freedom is what Arsenal fans ultimately want, and we need to see, you know, from an Arsenal perspective. Right. I'm just seeing if I can get enough slack on this cable that I can actually show you. Harvey, hold on. Wait, there we go. I think we've got enough. All right. If I just, there you go. He's down there. Harvey. There he is. Hello, mate. Anyway, right. He is a Spaniel Cross Weimaraner, for those that are curious. That's terrible camera positioning. What have I done? Change that there. There we go. Anyway, that's going to bring us to the end of today's show. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for, of course, taking in all of my rambling. I really do appreciate it. If you could drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. that'd be absolutely appreciated. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day. Enjoy yourself. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. Look after yourselves, as I always say. And that means not just physically, but mentally as well. If you need to get advice, help, support, go seek it out. I recommend that you do. I cannot recommend it enough. It's really important that you do that. So thank you as always. I will be, yes, here tomorrow morning. But as I am dog sitting, I'm also dog sitting at my in-laws' house certain days. So there are going to be days where I'm not here in the studio. So apologies for the incoming audio differences in those shows. But we'll still have a show, rain or shine. Don't worry about that. Thank you as always. I'll be back tomorrow morning, bright and early, 8 a.m. Have a great Wednesday. And as always, up the Arsenal.